A blind date turns into a media storm when dental assistant Natalia Cruz discovers her charming match is billionaire heir Daniel Hale. But as their worlds collide, so do secrets, scrutiny, and a question that could change everything. Is love still real when it's under a spotlight? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Natalia Cruz brushed a strand of dark hair from her face as she organized patient files at Sunshine Dental Clinic. At 28, she had mastered the art of efficiency, pride showing in her neatly pressed scrubs and the way she remembered every patient's name. "Natalia, are you still coming to dinner tonight?" asked Dr. Monroe, her boss, a kind woman in her 50s who had taken Natalia under her wing 3 years ago. "Yes, but I might be a little late. Elena called this morning and she's on one of her missions again," Natalia replied with a sigh. "Let me guess. Another setup?" Dr. Monroe smiled knowingly. Natalia nodded, rolling her eyes. "My cousin thinks being single for a year is a disease that needs immediate treatment." The truth was, Natalia's last relationship had left deeper scars than she liked to admit. Marco had seemed perfect, a charming paralegal with ambitious dreams. 6 months into living together, she discovered he had been cheating with a lawyer at his firm. The betrayal was bad enough, but when he left, he also left her with a broken lease and bills she struggled to pay on her dental assistant salary. "Just remember," Dr. Monroe said gently, "not all men are like Marco." "I know," Natalia said, though her heart wasn't convinced. "Besides, I've made Elena promise this one's normal, like shares a phone plan with his mom normal. No more aspiring DJs or future tech moguls." Later that evening, Natalia stood in front of her modest closet in her small Glendale apartment. The place wasn't fancy, but it was hers, filled with second-hand books and plants she nurtured with devoted care. Her mother's hand-crocheted blanket draped over her sofa, a reminder of the woman who had raised her alone after her father left when Natalia was just 5. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Wear something nice. Daniel is such a catch. Sweet, quiet and looking for someone real, trust me." Natalia texted back, "Define nice and catch. Remember our deal. If he's weird, you're paying my rent next month." She finally chose a simple blue dress. Nothing too fancy, but nicer than her everyday clothes. She applied light makeup, slipped on comfortable flats, and grabbed her purse. The coffee shop they'd agreed to meet at was just a 10-minute walk away. She'd give this Daniel guy exactly 1 hour of her time, then make an excuse about an early morning. At 7:25 p.m., 5 minutes before their scheduled meeting, Natalia's doorbell rang. Confused, she went to the window and peeked out. Her jaw dropped. A sleek black limousine was parked in front of her apartment building. A uniformed driver stood at her door. "There must be some mistake," she muttered, opening the door cautiously. "Miss Cruz?" the driver asked politely. "Mr. Hale is waiting." Natalia stood frozen. "I think you have the wrong person. I'm meeting someone at Cornerstone Coffee." "Mr. Hale thought you might prefer a different venue. He's waiting in the car if you'd like to speak with him." Anger bubbled up inside her. What kind of game was this? What happened to normal? She marched down the steps toward the limousine, ready to tell this Daniel exactly what she thought about this surprise. The driver opened the door and she bent down to look inside, prepared to give a quick piece of her mind before walking away. Inside sat a man who made her momentarily forget her anger. He was handsome in an understated way, warm brown eyes, strong jawline softened by a nervous smile. His suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Natalia, I'm Daniel." "Daniel Hale," he said, extending his hand. "I'm really sorry about this. I told your cousin not to mention all this." He gestured, vaguely at the limousine. "I just wanted one night with someone who didn't already Google me." Natalia didn't take his hand. "You said you were a contractor." Daniel chuckled nervously. "Technically I am. I contract global development deals." She nearly turned to leave right then. This was exactly what she didn't want. Complications. Pretenses, games. "Look, I don't know what Elena told you about me, but I'm not interested in whatever this is." She gestured at the limousine. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Disappointment, yes, but also understanding. and beneath that a loneliness that caught her off guard. 5 minutes, he said. Give me 5 minutes to explain, and if you still want to leave, I'll have Marcus drive you anywhere you want to go. Against her better judgment, Natalia climbed into the limousine, making sure to sit as far from Daniel as possible. 5 minutes, she agreed, crossing her arms. Daniel loosened his tie slightly. I really am sorry about this. The limo wasn't meant to impress you. It's actually for privacy. I can't really go to public places without attention. And why is that? Natalia asked, though she was beginning to guess. My family owns Hale International. We develop sustainable housing projects around the world. Natalia's eyes widened. Even she had heard of Hale International. Their logo was on half the construction sites downtown. When Elena described you, someone genuine who values simple things, I thought maybe we could connect without all the... He trailed off. Without me knowing you're rich, Natalia filled in bluntly. Daniel nodded. The last 3 women I dated were more interested in my bank account than me. One even had a prenup drafted after our second date. Despite herself, Natalia felt a twinge of sympathy. That doesn't excuse lying. You're right, Daniel said simply. I should have been honest from the start. I apologize. His straightforward admission surprised her. No excuses, no charm offensive. Where were you planning to take me? She asked, curiosity getting the better of her. I reserved a table at the rooftop. It's not flashy, but the food is good, and I know the owner. He gives me a private corner where people don't stare. Natalia hesitated. She should leave. This was exactly the kind of complication she'd been avoiding. And yet, one dinner, she said finally, just to be polite to Elena, but no more surprises. The relief on Daniel's face was genuine. Absolutely. Thank you for giving me a chance. The drive to the rooftop was mostly silent, with Natalia looking out the window and Daniel respectfully giving her space. When they arrived, he didn't try to impress her with fancy knowledge about wine or food. Instead, he asked questions about her life and actually listened to her answers. How did you become a dental assistant? He asked as they settled at a small table on a secluded portion of the rooftop, the city lights sparkling below them. My mum got sick when I was in high school. Nothing serious, but she needed dental work she couldn't afford. Our dentist let her pay in installments, no interest. It made such a difference to us. Natalia smiled at the memory. I decided then that I wanted to work somewhere that helped people that way. Daniel nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. That's really admirable. It's not saving the world, Natalia shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. It saved your mum's world, Daniel pointed out. Sometimes the most important work happens one person at a time. Something warm unfurled in Natalia's chest, but she quickly tamped it down. She'd been fooled by pretty words before. What about you? She asked. Did you always know you'd join the family business? A shadow crossed Daniel's face. My father expected it. After my mother died when I was 12, he became focused on legacy. Failure wasn't an option. That sounds lonely, Natalia said before she could stop herself. Daniel looked surprised, then thoughtful. It was. Still is, sometimes. The conversation flowed more easily after that. Daniel told her about growing up with wealth but never finding real connection, about charity galas where people spoke about poverty while wearing watches that could feed a family for years, about his desire to make his company's projects truly beneficial to communities. Natalia found herself opening up too. She told him about growing up with a single mother who worked 2 jobs, but always found time to help Natalia with homework. About their small Christmas celebrations where gifts were few but love was abundant. My mom taught me to never accept love that comes with fine print, she said, picking at her dessert. The last guy I dated told me I wasn't polished enough for his lifestyle, and he was just a paralegal, not... She gestured at Daniel. Daniel's eyes darkened. He was an idiot. The simple statement, delivered without flattery or agenda, made Natalia smile genuinely for the first time that evening. As they finished their meal, Daniel asked, "What would a real date look like to you? If you could design the perfect evening without worrying about impressing anyone?" Natalia considered the question. Tacos, laughter, music, no pressure to be anything more than what we are. Daniel nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. That sounds perfect. When the limousine pulled up to her apartment building later that night, Natalia was surprised to realize 3 hours had passed. Despite her initial anger, the evening had been nice. Daniel was nothing like she expected. "Thank you for giving me those 5 minutes," Daniel said, as Marcus opened the door for her. "Thank you for dinner," Natalia replied, suddenly awkward. "Would it be too forward to ask if I could see you again?" Daniel asked, his confidence faltering slightly. Natalia should say no, she knew she should. But instead, she heard herself saying, "Maybe, but no limousines next time." Daniel's face lit up. "Deal." As she walked up to her apartment, Natalia tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach. This was dangerous territory. Daniel Hale lived in a world she didn't belong in, a world of wealth and power and complications. Yet as she got ready for bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he truly listened when she spoke, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the loneliness she recognized because it mirrored her own. Her phone chimed with a text message. "Unknown number. Thank you again for tonight. I haven't been that comfortable with someone in a long time." Daniel, she saved his number, but didn't reply right away. Part of her wanted to shut this down before it began, but another part, a part she thought had died with her last heartbreak, whispered, "What if?" As she finally drifted off to sleep, Natalia had no idea that across town, Daniel Hale was sitting in his penthouse, still in his suit, staring out at the city lights and thinking about a dental assistant who saw past his money to the man underneath. Neither of them realized that their worlds were about to collide in ways they couldn't imagine, that their differences would both challenge and strengthen them, that sometimes the most unexpected meetings can lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And neither of them knew that someone was already watching, planning, waiting to use their budding connection for their own ends. A week passed before Natalia heard from Daniel again. She'd almost convinced herself that the evening had been a fluke, that he'd lost interest or found someone more suited to his world. She told herself it was for the best. Then, on Friday afternoon, as she was finishing with her last patient, her phone chimed with a text. "Daniel, would you be free tomorrow evening? I promise, no limousines this time." Natalia stared at the message, her heart doing an annoying little flip. She should say no. She should protect herself from whatever disappointment surely awaited down this path. Instead, her fingers typed, "What did you have in mind?" His response came quickly. "A real date. Your definition. Tacos, laughter, music. Just us being ourselves." She smiled despite herself. He'd remembered her exact words. "Natalia. Okay. But I'm serious about the no limousines thing. Daniel, I'll pick you up at 6, on foot." When Saturday evening arrived, Natalia found herself changing outfits 3 times before settling on jeans, a soft red sweater, and comfortable boots. No need to try too hard, she told herself. This was just tacos after. At precisely 6 p.m., her doorbell rang. When she opened it, she almost didn't recognize Daniel. Gone was the expensive suit and carefully styled hair. Instead, he wore faded jeans, sneakers, and a simple blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hand through it. "Hi," he said, looking almost nervous. "Is this more what you had in mind?" Natalia couldn't help but smile. "Much better, though I have to say you look good in normal clothes." Daniel laughed. "These are normal clothes. The suits are my work uniform." He hesitated before adding, "I brought you something." From behind his back, he produced a small potted cactus with a tiny red flower blooming on top. "Elena mentioned you like plants," he explained. "And this one's supposed to be hard to kill," which seemed like a good metaphor for something that might survive our unusual start. Natalia accepted the plant, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. No expensive jewelry or designer items, just something that showed he'd paid attention. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Let me put this inside and we can go." As they walked through her neighborhood, Natalia was struck by how normal Daniel seemed now, away from the trappings of wealth. He listened attentively as she pointed out her favorite second-hand bookstore, And the bakery where Mrs. Gonzalez made the best conchas in Glendale. So where are these famous tacos? Daniel asked, a playful smile on his lips. Just around the corner. It's nothing fancy. Just a food truck, actually. But Fernando makes the best al pastor in town. Fernando's Tacos was parked in its usual spot, a line of locals already formed. Colorful string lights hung around the small seating area, and the savory aroma of grilled meat and spices filled the air. This smells amazing, Daniel said genuinely. When it was their turn to order, Natalia spoke to Fernando in Spanish, introducing Daniel and recommending her favorites. Daniel surprised her by responding in decent Spanish himself. "You speak Spanish?" she asked as they carried their loaded plates to a small table. Daniel shrugged. "I spent a year in Mexico City overseeing a housing project. I'm not fluent, but I can get by." They ate their tacos perched on plastic chairs, salsa occasionally dripping down their fingers. Daniel didn't seem bothered by the casual setting or the paper napkins. In fact, he looked more relaxed than he had at the fancy restaurant. "This is the best taco I've ever had," he declared, reaching for another. "Seriously, why do people pay $50 for tiny portions when food like this exists?" Natalia laughed. "That's what I always wonder when I see those fancy food pictures on Instagram." As they finished eating, the sound of music drifted from the nearby park. Curious, they walked over to find a local mariachi band performing, people dancing on the say. "Grass, it's the community concert series," Natalia explained, "every third Saturday." Daniel watched the dancers, his eyes bright. "Would you like to dance?" Natalia hesitated. "I'm not very good." "That makes two of us," Daniel grinned, holding out his hand. "But that's not the point, is it?" Something about his smile, open, without pretense, made Natalia take his hand. They joined the other couples, swaying to the music under the string lights. When Daniel spun her around and missed a step, they both laughed, and the sound was pure and unguarded. As the evening air grew cooler, Daniel slipped off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders without comment. The gesture was so natural, so unthinking that Natalia didn't even protest. On a nearby bench, a man raised his phone, snapping several photos of them before disappearing into the crowd. Neither Natalia nor Daniel noticed. They walked slowly back to her apartment, talking about everything and nothing. Favorite books, childhood memories, dreams they'd once had, before life took different turns. "I wanted to be a veterinarian," Natalia admitted. "But college was expensive, and after Mom got sick, I needed something with quicker training." "Do you regret it?" Daniel asked. Natalia considered the question. "No, I love what I do. Maybe someday I'll go back to school, but for now, I'm where I'm supposed to be." She glanced at him. "What about you? Any unfulfilled dreams?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I wanted to build things with my hands, not just finance them. My grandfather was a carpenter before he started the company. He taught me how to make birdhouses when I was little." He smiled at the memory. "My father thought it was beneath me." "That's sad," Natalia said softly. "It is what it is," Daniel replied. "But lately I've been thinking about what I really want, not just what's expected." When they reached her door, Natalia reluctantly shrugged off his jacket. "I had a really good time," she said, meaning it. "So did I," Daniel replied. He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see you again. Maybe you could show me more of your Glendale." Natalia knew she should be cautious, but the evening had felt so right, so easy. "I'd like that." Daniel leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, Natalia rose slightly on her toes and met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, brief, but it sent warmth spreading through her chest. "Good night, Natalia," he said softly. "Good night, Daniel." Inside her apartment, Natalia placed the small cactus on her windowsill, smiling at the bright red flower. For the first time in over a year, she allowed herself to feel hopeful about where this might lead. Across town, Daniel walked into his penthouse and immediately loosened his tie, only to realize he wasn't wearing one. He laughed at himself, marveling at how different he felt tonight compared to any other date he could remember. With Natalia, he wasn't Daniel Hale of Hale International. He was just Daniel, a man enjoying tacos and dancing badly to mariachi. music. He hadn't told her yet about the meeting he'd cancelled to see her tonight, a dinner with potential investors worth millions. Somehow sitting across from Natalia at a folding table eating $2 tacos had felt more valuable than any business deal. His phone rang, disturbing his thoughts. The screen showed his father's name. Daniel sighed and answered. "Where were you tonight?" Richard Hale demanded without preamble. "The Morgans were expecting you at the club." "I had other plans, Dad," Daniel replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Personal plans. More important than securing the Morgan portfolio?" his father asked incredulously. "Yes," Daniel said simply. "To me, they were." There was a long pause before his father spoke again. "This isn't like you, Daniel. I need you focused. The company needs you focused." "I am focused," Daniel assured him, "but I'm also living my life." He changed the subject before his father could argue. "How's Singapore?" "Closing the deal." They talked business for a few minutes before ending the call. Daniel walked to his window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about a small apartment somewhere in Glendale where Natalia might be doing the same. Over the next 3 weeks, Daniel and Natalia fell into a rhythm. They met whenever their schedules allowed, always in Natalia's neighborhood, always doing simple things that required no pretense. They ate at family-owned restaurants where the owners knew Natalia by name. They browsed her favorite bookstore, arguing playfully about mystery versus science fiction. They helped Mrs. Gonzalez carry boxes into her bakery and were rewarded with fresh conchas. One rainy Sunday, they spent the afternoon in Natalia's apartment, cooking her mother's tamale recipe. Daniel proved surprisingly adept at spreading the mesa on corn husks. "My housekeeper taught me to cook when I was a teenager," he explained when Natalia looked impressed. "Dad was always traveling, and I got tired of eating alone in restaurants. I can't imagine growing up like that," Natalia said, passing him another corn husk. "It wasn't all bad," Daniel shrugged. "I had everything I needed, just not always what I wanted." "Which was?" "This," he said simply, gesturing at the kitchen counter scattered with ingredients, at Natalia with masa on her cheek. "Normal. Real." When the tamales were done, they sat on her small balcony, eating and talking as the rain fell. Daniel told her about his mother, how she'd loved gardening and classical music, how her death had changed his father from a loving parent to a driven businessman. Natalia told him about her mother, who now lived in Arizona near Natalia's aunt, about how she'd worked cleaning houses to put food on their table, about her unwavering belief that Natalia could be anything she wanted. "She sounds amazing," Daniel said. "She is," Natalia agreed. "She'd like you, I think." The words hung between them, acknowledging what they'd been carefully not discussing, that this was becoming something real, something with potential. Later that evening, as Daniel was leaving, his phone buzzed with a text. His smile faded as he read it. "Everything okay?" Natalia asked. "Yes, just work," he said, but his expression remained troubled. "I need to go." He kissed her goodbye, but Natalia could feel his mind was already elsewhere. After he left, she fought the familiar doubts. Was this how it would always be? Would his world eventually pull him away from hers? The next morning, as she entered the dental clinic, something felt off. The receptionist, Jenny, gave her an odd look. "Everything okay?" Natalia asked, echoing her question to Daniel the night before. "You didn't tell me you were dating Daniel Hale," Jenny said, sliding a tablet across the counter. Natalia's stomach dropped as she looked at the screen. There, on a popular gossip site, was a photo of her and Daniel at the park. She was wrapped in his jacket, looking up at him, laughter on her face. The headline read, "Billionaire heir's new fling, who is this mystery woman?" The comments below were worse. "Gold digger found her mark. How long before she gets pregnant to lock down that fortune? Bet she's already pricing out mansions." Natalia felt sick. This was exactly what she'd feared. Her phone began ringing. It was Daniel. "Natalia, I just saw the article. I'm so sorry. I had no idea anyone was watching us." "It's fine," she said automatically, though it wasn't. "These things happen, right?" "No, it's not fine," Daniel said firmly. "Those comments are disgusting. I've already called our legal team to have the worst ones removed." "Your legal team," Natalia repeated. the words highlighting the gulf between their worlds. "Daniel, I can't do this." "Do what?" His voice was suddenly wary. "This. Us. I'm not equipped for this kind of scrutiny. I'm a dental assistant. From Glendale who likes used books and tamales. I won't be a headline." "Natalia, please," Daniel's voice was raw with emotion. "Don't let these people dictate what happens between us. What we have is real." "But your world isn't," she said softly. "At least not to me. I wanted you, not your money, but I won't compete with your world." Before he could respond, she ended, the cool tears blurring her vision. Throughout the day, Daniel called repeatedly, but she let each go to voicemail. That evening, she listened to his messages, each one more desperate than the last. The final one broke her heart. "Natalia, I understand. If you need space. But please know that these past weeks have been the most real thing I've experienced in years. You saw me, not my name, not my money, just me. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Natalia curled up on her sofa, hugging her mother's crocheted blanket around her shoulders. The small cactus on her windowsill had sprouted. A second bloom, bright red against the green. She wanted to call him back, wanted to tell him that she missed him already. But the cruel comments from strangers echoed in her mind. Could their relationship survive the scrutiny, the assumptions, the different worlds they inhabited? As she drifted into uneasy sleep, Natalia didn't know that across town Daniel was making plans. Plans that would either bridge the gap between their worlds or destroy any chance they had at happiness. All she knew was that for the first time since Marco's betrayal, she had opened her heart, only to find that sometimes loving someone meant facing challenges much bigger than a broken lease or unpaid bills. Sometimes loving someone meant facing a world determined to misunderstand everything about you. 3 days passed without contact between Natalia and Daniel. At the dental clinic, Natalia threw herself into work, grateful for the distraction. But in quiet moments between patients, memories of Daniel would surface. His laugh, the way he listened so intently when she spoke, how natural it felt to cook. Beside him in her tiny kitchen, the gossip article had been just the first. Now there were others, each with a different theory about the mystery woman who had captured Daniel Hale's attention. Some speculated she was a model, others an heiress, trying to stay anonymous. None guessed she was simply a dental assistant from Glendale. "You okay?" Dr. Monroe asked, finding Natalia staring blankly at a patient file late Thursday afternoon. "You've seemed distracted all week." Natalia started to say she was fine, but the kindness in her boss's eyes broke through her defenses. "Not really," she admitted. "I've been seeing someone, and it got complicated." Dr. Monroe settled into the chair across from her. "Want to talk about it?" Natalia hesitated, then pulled up the gossip site on her phone and passed it over. Dr. Monroe's eyes widened as she looked at the photo of Natalia with Daniel. "Daniel Hale?" she asked, clearly surprised. "The Daniel Hale?" Natalia nodded miserably. "We met on a blind date. My cousin Elena set us up. I had no idea who he was at first. And now?" Dr. Monroe handed the phone back. "Now I can't handle all this." Natalia gestured at the screen. "The comments, the speculation, people thinking I'm after his money." "Are you?" "No," Natalia said forcefully. "That's what makes this so awful. I liked him because he was kind and funny, and he made me feel seen. The money actually makes everything harder." Dr. Monroe nodded thoughtfully. "Life has a way of testing the things that matter most. The question is whether what you two have is worth fighting for." Before Natalia could respond, Jenny poked her head into the room. Natalia, there's someone here to see you." Natalia's heart leapt, thinking it might be Daniel, but when she walked to the reception area, she found an older woman in an expensive suit, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob. "Miss Cruz?" the woman asked, extending her hand. "I'm Victoria Mercer, head of public relations for Hale International." Natalia's stomach dropped. "I'm just finishing up," she said coolly. "We can talk outside." Once they were on the sidewalk, Natalia crossed her arms defensively. "If Daniel sent you to change my mind, Mr. Hale doesn't know I'm here," Victoria interrupted. "In fact, he'd be furious if he found out." Then why are you here? Victoria's professional smile never wavered. To offer you a deal. The Hale family has a certain image to maintain. While Daniel is free to date whoever he chooses, we prefer to manage how. These relationships are portrayed in the media. Manage, Natalia repeated flatly. Yes, we're prepared to offer you a very generous compensation package in exchange for your discretion. You want to pay me off, Natalia said, anger building inside her. You think I'm going to sell stories about Daniel to the tabloids? Not at all, Victoria said smoothly. We simply acknowledge that dating a Hale comes with certain inconveniences. The package would help offset those while ensuring you understand the importance of privacy. Natalia stared at the woman, speechless with outrage. I don't want your money, she finally managed. I never did. Victoria reached into her purse and withdrew a business card. Think it over. The offer is quite substantial, enough to pay off any student loans, perhaps put a down payment on a house. She placed the card in Natalia's unresisting hand. You seem like a practical young woman. Daniel's relationships typically don't last beyond a few months. Why not benefit from the experience? As Victoria walked away, Natalia felt hot tears prickling behind her eyes. This was exactly why she'd ended things. This world where relationships were managed and hearts were secondary to images. That evening, Natalia sat on her balcony, staring at Victoria's business card. The woman's words echoed in her mind. Daniels. Relationships typically don't last beyond a few months. Was that true? Was she just the latest in a string of women who briefly caught Daniel's attention before he moved on? Their connection had felt so genuine, but maybe that's what all the others thought too. Her phone chimed with a text from Elena. Please talk to Daniel. He's called me 3 times asking about you. He's really hurting, Nat. Natalia sighed and put the phone away without responding. Part of her wanted to call him to hear his voice. But another part, the practical part that had helped her survive her father's abandonment and Marco's betrayal, insisted this was for the best. Better a clean break now than a messy public heartbreak later. The next morning, Natalia arrived at the clinic early, hoping work would keep her mind occupied. She was surprised to find a small crowd gathered outside, mostly young women with phones raised, a few men with professional cameras. There she is, someone shouted as Natalia approached. Immediately, questions flew at her from all directions. Are you and Daniel Hale still together? How did you meet? Is it true you're engaged? Natalia froze, panic rising in her chest. How had they found her? How did they know where she worked? From inside the clinic, Dr. Monroe appeared, pushing through the crowd to reach Natalia. She put a protective arm around her shoulders. No comment, Dr. Monroe said firmly, guiding Natalia through the door. Once inside, she locked it behind them. What's happening? Natalia asked, her voice shaking. Someone leaked your name to the press, Dr. Monroe explained. It's all over the internet this morning. Natalia felt dizzy. This was worse than she'd imagined. Now it wasn't just online comments. It was real people invading her workplace, her life. I need to call Daniel, she said, reaching for her phone with trembling hands. Before she could dial, there was a commotion outside. Through the clinic windows, Natalia saw a black SUV pull up. Security personnel in suits emerged, forming a path through the crowd. And then Daniel was there, striding purposefully toward the clinic door. Dr. Monroe unlocked it, allowing him inside before securing it again. Natalia, Daniel said, his face etched with concern. Are you okay? I just found out about this. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I swear I'm going to find whoever leaked your information. Despite everything, seeing him brought an immediate sense of relief. I'm fine, she said, though her voice betrayed her. Just overwhelmed. Daniel took a step toward her, then stopped, uncertain of his welcome. I'm so sorry, this is exactly what you were afraid of. Mr. Hale, Dr. Monroe interjected, I need to ask, what's your plan here? We have patients arriving in 30 minutes, Daniel nodded. My security team will clear the area, and I've already spoken with a lawyer about issuing cease and desist orders to the outlets that published Natalia's personal information. He turned back to Natalia. But that's just a temporary fix. We need to talk about what happens next." Dr. Monroe tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone in the reception area. "Your PR person came to see me yesterday," Natalia said once they were alone. "Victoria Mercer." Daniel's expression darkened. "What? I never authorized that." "She offered me money to be discreet about our relationship. She said your relationships usually don't last more than a few months anyway." Daniel closed his eyes briefly as if in pain. "Victoria works for my father, not me. And what she told you isn't true, at least not the way she meant it." He met Natalia's gaze directly. "Yes. I've dated women who didn't stay around long, but that's because they wanted the lifestyle, not me. Once they realized I wasn't interested in the constant parties and photo ops, they moved on." He took a cautious step closer. "What I have with you, it's different. It's real." Natalia wanted desperately to believe him, but the chaos outside was a stark reminder of the challenges they faced. "Even if that's true," she said softly, "how can this work? My life is here, simple, private. Your life is all that." She gestured vaguely toward the window. "It doesn't have to be," Daniel said. "Not all the time. Yes, there are business obligations I can't avoid, but day to day I can live however I choose." He hesitated, then added, "with whoever I choose." Before Natalia could respond, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. As soon as she answered, a voice she didn't know asked, "Is it true you're pregnant with Daniel Hale's baby?" Natalia ended the call immediately, her hand shaking. "What was that?" Daniel asked, alarmed by her expression. "A reporter," she said, her voice hollow, "asking if I'm pregnant." Daniel's face hardened. "This has gone too far. Come with me." "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can talk without all this craziness." Natalia hesitated. "I have patience. I'll explain to Dr. Monroe," Daniel promised. "Please, Natalia, just for today." Something in his eyes, the sincerity, the genuine concern, made her nod. "Let me get my purse." After a brief conversation with Dr. Monroe, who was surprisingly understanding, Natalia found herself in the back of Daniel's SUV, flanked by security. Personnel. They drove for almost an hour, eventually turning onto a private road that wound through dense trees. When they emerged into a clearing, Natalia gasped. A simple but beautiful cabin stood before them, surrounded by gardens and overlooking a small lake. "What is this place?" she asked as they got out of the car. "My grandfather built it," Daniel explained, dismissing the security team with a nod. "Before Hale International became what it is today. My father wanted to tear it down years ago, but I wouldn't let him. I come here when I need to remember what matters." Inside, the cabin was cozy and unpretentious. Comfortable furniture, books lining the walls, a stone fireplace. Nothing like the sleek modern penthouse she'd imagined Daniel living in. "No one knows about this place except family," Daniel said as they settled on the porch overlooking the lake. "Not the press, not business associates, not even Victoria Mercer." Natalia took in the peaceful scene before them. "It's beautiful. It's real," Daniel said simply. "Like what we have." He turned to face her fully. "Natalia, I know this situation isn't what you signed up for, but I want you to know that I'm in this all the way, if you are." "How can it work?" she asked again, voicing her deepest fear. "Our lives are so different." "They don't have to be, not completely." Daniel took her hand cautiously. "Yes, there will be times when my name brings attention we don't want, but we can build our own life together, on our terms." "What about your father? Victoria? The company?" Daniel's expression grew determined. "I've spent my whole life trying to be who my father wanted me to be, but these past weeks with you, I've remembered who I actually am." He squeezed her hand gently. "My father will have to accept that. As for Victoria, I'll deal with her, and the company doesn't control my personal life." Natalia wanted to believe him, but the image of those reporters outside the clinic was still fresh in her mind. "I need time," she said finally. "To think about all this." Daniel nodded, disappointment flashing in his eyes before understanding took its place. "Of course. Take all the time you need." They spent the rest of the day at the cabin, walking by the lake, talking about everything and nothing. For a few precious hours, the outside world with all its complications seemed far away. As evening approached, Daniel drove her home. The reporters were gone from her apartment building, though Natalia suspected they'd be back. "Can I call you tomorrow?" Daniel asked as they pulled up. Natalia nodded. Despite everything, she couldn't deny that being with him felt right, even as everything around them felt wrong. Inside her apartment, Natalia called her mother, something she'd been avoiding since the gossip articles began. "Mija," her mother said when she answered. "I've been worried. Elena told me what's happening." Natalia sank onto her sofa. "It's crazy, Mum. Reporters, photographers, all because of who Daniel is." "And who is he to you?" her mother asked gently. "Not his name or his money, the man himself." Natalia closed her eyes, seeing Daniel's face as he'd shown her the cabin, heard his voice as he'd said, "I've remembered who I actually am." "He's someone who sees me," she said softly. "Really sees me." "Then that's what matters," her mother said simply. "The rest is just noise." After they hung up, Natalia stood at her window, looking out at the city lights. Her mother's words echoed. In her mind, the rest is just noise. Was it that simple? Could she learn to tune out the chaos that came with Daniel's world and focus on what they built together? Her phone chimed with a text from Daniel. "Made it home safe. Thinking of you." As she typed a response, Natalia realized something had shifted inside her. The fear was still there, but alongside it was something stronger. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, what they had could survive the noise. What she didn't know was that across town, Daniel was making a decision that would change everything. A decision that would either prove his commitment to their future or destroy any chance they had at happiness. And somewhere in between, Victoria Mercer was making phone calls, determined to protect the Hale family interests, with or without Daniel's approval. The pieces were moving. The stage was set. And Natalia, who had only wanted a normal date with a normal man, was about to discover just how extraordinary love could be and how high the price for that love might rise. The next morning, Natalia woke to a flood of missed calls and text messages. Most were from numbers she didn't recognize, likely reporters still hunting for their story. But one was from Daniel, sent just after midnight. "Daniel, I need to see you tomorrow. There's something important we should talk about. Can I pick you up at 9? Natalia hesitated before responding. She'd told him she needed time, but the urgency in his message worried her. "Natalia, is everything okay?" His response came quickly. "Daniel, everything's fine. Just made a decision I want to share with you. Trust me." Despite the chaos of the past few days, Natalia found that she did trust him. She texted back a simple yes and got ready for the day. Precisely 9 a.m. Daniel arrived, this time in a modest sedan rather than the conspicuous SUV. "Trying to blend in?" Natalia asked as she got in. Daniel smiled. "Something like that. I figured we could use a break from the attention." He drove them out of the city, taking back roads Natalia wasn't familiar with. Eventually, they turned onto a quiet street, lined with small businesses, a bakery, a hardware store, a flower shop. It reminded Natalia of the downtown area in the small Arizona town where her mother now lived. "Where are we?" she asked, as Daniel parked the car. "San Benito," he replied. "Small town about an hour from LA. I have something to show you." They walked down the main street, Daniel returning friendly nods from several locals who seemed to recognize him but showed none of the excitement or intrusion Natalia had come to expect. They stopped in front of a brick building with large front windows. A sign above the door read, "Cornerstone Community Clinic" in simple blue letters. Through the windows, Natalia could see a modern waiting room with comfortable-looking chairs and children's toys in one corner. "What is this place?" she asked. "A dental and medical clinic for underserved communities," Daniel explained. "Hale International funds it as part of our community outreach." He led her inside, where a receptionist greeted him warmly. "Morning, Mr. Hale. Doctor Peterson is expecting you." They were shown into a spacious office where an older man with kind eyes and silver hair stood to greet them. "Daniel, good to see you," he said, shaking Daniel's hand before turning to Natalia. "And you must be Natalia. Cruz, I've heard a lot about you." "Natalia, this is Dr. Alan Peterson," Daniel introduced them. "He oversees all our community health initiatives." "Pleasure to meet you," Natalia said, still confused about why they were there. "Dr. Peterson," Daniel said, "would you mind giving us a few minutes?" "Of course." The older man smiled and left the office, closing the door behind him. Daniel turned to Natalia, a mixture of nervousness and determination in his eyes. "I mentioned I made a decision. Several, actually." "What kind of decisions?" Natalia asked cautiously. Daniel gestured for her to sit, then took the chair beside her rather than behind the desk. "First, I had a long talk with my father last night. I told him I'm stepping back from some of my responsibilities at Hale International." Natalia's eyes widened. "What? Why would you do that?" "To focus on what matters to me," Daniel said simply. "I'm not leaving the company completely, but I'm going to oversee our community development projects exclusively, like this clinic." "Because of me?" Natalia asked, dismayed at the thought of him altering his career path for their relationship. "Because of us," Daniel corrected gently, "but also because of me. These past weeks with you have reminded me what I actually care about. Yes, I'm good at making deals and managing investments, but this work, creating spaces that actually help people, this is what gives me purpose." He took her hand. "My father wasn't happy, but he'll come around, especially when he sees the positive press it generates." "What about Victoria?" Natalia couldn't help asking. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. "Victoria no longer works for Hale International. I made that clear to my father after learning she approached you." Natalia took a moment to process everything he was saying. "So you're going to work here?" "Not exactly. I'll be overseeing all our community projects." Daniel hesitated, then continued, "But I do want to live closer to here, away from the spotlight." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small key. "Which brings me to my second decision." "What's that?" Natalia asked, eyeing the key. "I bought a house," Daniel said. "Nothing extravagant, just a small place near the lake where my grandfather's cabin is. Somewhere quiet, private." He placed the key on the desk between them. "Somewhere we could build a life, if that's what you want." Natalia stared at the key. "Daniel, this is a lot. Moving, changing your job, it's so sudden." "It might seem sudden," Daniel acknowledged, "but I've been thinking about these changes for a while. You just gave me the courage to make them happen." He met her gaze steadily. "I'm not asking you to move in right away. I know we still have a lot to figure out. But I wanted you to know that I'm serious about creating a life that works for both of us." Before Natalia could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Peterson poked his head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but your next appointment is here, Daniel." Daniel nodded. "We'll be right there." When Dr. Peterson had gone, Natalia looked at Daniel questioningly. "Next appointment?" Daniel smiled mysteriously. "One more thing to show you." They left the office and followed Dr. Peterson to another part of the building. He opened a door to reveal a modern dental suite. Brand new equipment, bright lighting, cheerful artwork on the walls. "What do you think?" Daniel asked, watching Natalia's face carefully. "It's beautiful," she said, running her hand over the new dental chair. "Any patient would be lucky to be treated here." "We're looking for a dental assistant," Dr. Peterson said, casually. "Someone experienced, compassionate, good with patients who might be nervous about dental care." Natalia's head snapped up, looking between Daniel and Dr. Peterson. "Are you offering me a job?" "The position is yours if you want it," Dr. Peterson confirmed. "Daniel mentioned your skills and passion for helping others. That's exactly what we need here." Natalia turned to Daniel, emotions warring inside her. "You did this for me?" "I mentioned you," Daniel corrected. "Dr. Peterson made the decision to offer you the position based on your qualifications and experience." Dr. Peterson nodded. "We genuinely need someone with your skills. The offer stands regardless of anything else." He tactfully excused himself, leaving them alone. Natalia walked slowly around the room, taking in the equipment, the care that had gone into creating the space. Finally, she turned back to Daniel. "This is all happening so fast," she said softly. "I know." Daniel acknowledged. And I'll understand. If you need more time to think about everything. The job, the house, none of it has to be decided today. He took a step closer to her. But there is one thing I can't wait any longer to say. Natalia's heart beat faster. What's that? I love you, Daniel said simply. Not because you're different from the women I usually meet. Not because you see past my name or my money. But because you're you, kind, strong, real. The woman who reads to elderly patients when they're nervous. Who keeps a crocheted blanket her mother made because it reminds you of where you came from. He took her hands in his. I love you, Natalia Cruz. And whatever you decide about the job or the house or us, that won't change. Natalia stood frozen, overwhelmed by his words, by the sincerity in his eyes. A part of her wanted to rush into his arms and say yes to everything. But the practical part, the part that had protected her heart for so long, held her back. I need to think, she said finally. About all of it. Daniel nodded, disappointment flashing briefly in his eyes before understanding took its place. Of course, take all the time you need. The drive back to Los Angeles was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached her apartment, Daniel walked her to the door. Whatever you decide, he said softly, know that I meant everything I said today. Natalia nodded, unable to find words for the emotions swirling inside her. She watched him drive away, the key to the lake house heavy in her pocket where he'd insisted she keep it to think about. Inside her apartment, Natalia called the only person who could help her make sense of her conflicted feelings. Mom, can you talk? An hour later, after pouring out everything to her mother, Daniel's declarations, the job offer, the house, Natalia fell silent, waiting for the wisdom her mother had always provided in times of crisis. What are you afraid of, Mija? Her mother asked gently. That it's too good to be true, Natalia admitted. That I'll uproot my life for him and then discover it was all a fantasy. Is that what your heart tells you about Daniel? That he's not genuine? Natalia thought about Daniel's eyes when he said he loved her, about the simple cabin his grandfather built, about his determination to create a life that blended their two worlds. No, she said softly. My heart believes him. Then perhaps the fear isn't about Daniel at all, her mother suggested. Perhaps it's about you, about whether you're brave, enough to be happy. The words hit Natalia like a physical blow. Was that it? Was she sabotaging her own chance at happiness because she was afraid to trust her heart again? What should I do, she asked her mother. That, Mija, only you can decide. But remember what I always told you. Love that comes with fine print isn't love at all. And from what you've told me, Daniel's love has no conditions, just courage. After hanging up, Natalia sat on her balcony as night fell over the city. The small cactus Daniel had given her now boasted 3 bright red blooms, small but strong, thriving despite the odds. Her phone chimed with a text from Dr. Monroe. Is everything okay? We missed you at the clinic today. Natalia realized she hadn't even called in to explain her absence. So much had happened so quickly. She quickly replied with an apology and brief explanation about needing personal time. Dr. Monroe's response was immediate. Take all the time you need. You deserve happiness, Natalia. All of us here see that. Tears pricked Natalia's eyes at the simple kindness. Dr. Monroe had been more than a boss. She'd been a mentor, a friend. The thought of leaving the clinic brought an unexpected pang of sadness, but as she looked around her small apartment, Natalia realized something important. This place had been a refuge after Marco's betrayal, safe, predictable, entirely under her control. But it had also become a kind of cage, protecting her from both hurt and joy. Was she ready to step outside that cage, to risk her heart completely, on the promise of something greater? The next morning, Natalia woke early, clarity having come sometime in the night. She made several phone calls, packed a small bag, and drove to the address Daniel had written on the card with the key. The lake house was smaller than she'd imagined, a modern cottage with large windows overlooking the water. Nothing ostentatious or showy, just beautiful in a quiet, understated way. Daniel's car was in the driveway. As she approached the front door, it opened, revealing Daniel in jeans and a simple sweater, surprise written across his face. Natalia, she took a deep breath. I have some conditions. Daniel blinked, then stepped back, inviting her inside. I'm listening. The interior was sparsely furnished, just the essentials, as if waiting for someone to make it a home. Natalia set her bag down and turned to face him. First, I want to keep working at Sunshine Dental for at least a month, to give Dr. Munro time to find a replacement and to properly say goodbye to my patients. Daniel nodded. Of course. Second, I'm not moving in right away. I'll keep my apartment for now, stay here sometimes, see how it feels. That makes sense, Daniel agreed, hope beginning to dawn in his eyes. Third, Natalia continued, her voice softening, when I do move in, I want to contribute. Not equally. I know that's not realistic with our income difference, but something fair, something that makes this our home, not just yours. Daniel stepped closer. Anything else? Natalia swallowed hard. Yes. Fourth, I need you to know that I love you too. And that scares me more than reporters or gossip columns or your family's expectations, because loving you means trusting you with my heart completely. Daniel's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. I will cherish and protect that trust every day, he promised, his voice thick with emotion. For as long as you'll let me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Natalia's breath caught, thinking for a moment it might be a ring. Instead, it was a worn wooden carving of a small bird. My grandfather made this, Daniel explained. He said it represented freedom, the freedom to fly wherever your heart leads. He placed it gently in her palm. That's what I want for us, Natalia. The freedom to build a life that's truly ours. Natalia closed her fingers around the carving, tears spilling down her cheeks. It's perfect. Daniel pulled her into his arms then, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. When their lips met, it felt like coming home. To a home Natalia hadn't even realized she'd been searching for. They spent the day by the lake, talking about their plans, their hopes, their fears. Daniel showed her the community garden he'd started behind the house. Natalia told him about her conversation with her mother. I'd like to meet her, Daniel said. The woman who raised such an amazing daughter. She'll like you, Natalia said, with certainty. Especially once she sees that there's no fine print to your love. As evening approached, Daniel built a small fire in the fire pit by the shore. They sat wrapped in blankets, watching the stars appear one by one above the water. What made you decide, Daniel asked softly, to give us a chance? Natalia thought about all that had happened since a limousine had appeared outside her apartment. The fancy dinner, the tacos in the park, the gossip articles, Victoria's offer, the reporters. None of it had been what she expected when she agreed to a blind date with a normal guy. But then she thought about what remained when all that noise faded away, the man beside her, who had seen her clearly from the beginning, who had been willing to reshape his world to make room for hers. I realized that what we have isn't about where we live or what jobs we do, she said finally. It's about how we see each other, really see each other. Daniel smiled, understanding, in his eyes. Tacos and laughter and music, he said, echoing her words from their first real date. No pressure to be anything more than what we are. Exactly, Natalia agreed, leaning into his embrace, though I have to admit, I never expected what we are would include a lake house and a community clinic. Daniel laughed. Life rarely gives us what we expect. He kissed her temple gently. Sometimes it gives us something even better. 3 months later, on a warm summer evening, Daniel and Natalia stood in the community garden behind their home, for it was truly their home now, filled with books and plants and the warmth of shared laughter. Natalia had transitioned to working at the San Benito clinic 3 days a week, keeping 1 day at Sunshine Dental to maintain the relationships she'd built there. The reporters had long since moved on to other stories, though occasionally someone recognized Daniel when they went into the city. Elena had come to visit, smugly taking credit for their happiness. I told you he was a catch, she'd teased Natalia. Now, as the sun set over the lake, Daniel took Natalia's hand and led her to a small bench surrounded by sunflowers. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. This time, It was a small velvet box. Inside nestled a simple but beautiful ring, a diamond flanked by two small rubies that reminded Natalia of the flowers on the cactus he'd given her, which now thrived on their kitchen windowsill. "Natalia Cruz," Daniel said, kneeling before her, not dramatically but humbly. "You told me what a real date felt like. Can I show you what forever might feel like?" Tears of joy spilled down Natalia's cheeks as she looked at the man before her. Not Daniel Hale of Hale International, but simply Daniel, the man who had proved that love without conditions was possible. The man who had waited patiently for her to trust not just him, but herself. "Only if forever includes tacos on Tuesdays," she answered, her voice choked with emotion. Daniel's face broke into a radiant smile. "I already bought the salsa." Natalia laughed through her tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Then yes, 1,000 times yes." As Daniel gathered her into his arms, Natalia reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a blind date with no warning to a future full of promise. It hadn't been an easy road, with its public scrutiny and private fears, with the collision of their different worlds. But standing in the garden they'd planted together, in the home they'd created together, Natalia knew with absolute certainty that some journeys, however unexpected, led exactly where you were meant to be. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Daniel kissed her with a promise of forever. A promise that needed no fine print, no conditions, no guarantees beyond the love they'd found in each other's hearts. A love that had begun with a blind date, a limousine, and a woman brave enough to look past appearances to the truth beneath. A love that would continue, day by day, taco by taco, growing stronger with each sunrise over their lake. A love that was, at its heart, the simplest and most profound thing of all: real. The end.